So we're at that appointed hour. Sorry for the slight delay. Well, I'll now call the meeting to order. Are you going to take roll?
I don't have a list of everybody.
Okay. Well, let me do roll call then. Commissioner Black? Here. Commissioner Long? Mayor Cobb? Here. Mr. Bowie? Councilman Shirley? Commissioner Crockett?
Yes, I'm on.
Councilman Shirley?
Here.
And I'm John Heaton, and I'm
Mr. Volpato.
And, oh, I'm sorry, Jack, Mr. Volpato, pardon me. He's here. So we do have a quorum. So with that, the next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from 3/26/2018. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I move for the approval of the minutes.
Second that motion.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. Are you gonna call Molly, or are you gonna do?
No, sir, but John, I was going to confirm that John is on the other line. John Waters? Can you hear me, sir?
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Yeah. So I'll call the roll. Commissioner Black?
Here.
No, this is for the motion.
Do you approve the motion?
Motion,
Oh,
the motion to approve the minutes from
I seconded that motion.
3. Okay, well, are you going to vote for it too?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Long,
Yes.
Mayor Cobb,
Yes.
Commissioner or Councilman Shirley,
Yes.
Commissioner Crockett,
Yes,
Jack Volpato,
Yes.
and I vote yes. It's unanimous. The motion passes. The next item on the agenda is the financial report. Mr. Lowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, if you look, I believe you received a copy of it. As far as year-to-date expenditures, we've had total expenditures of a little over $8,124.78, which $2,772 was liability insurance, and then the $5,321 was for the audit. Right now, at May 31st, we did receive the check of $11,054 for the tower rental. We received that back in May. And right now, at May 31st, 2018, we have a cash balance of $99,010.69.
Okay, thank you. Any questions regarding the financial report and status? Hearing none. The next item on the agenda is the accounts payable, if there are any.
We've had none since the last meeting.
So it's a very frugal organization. So thank you. So there's nothing to deal with there.
Thank you.
So thank you, Mr. Lowe. Appreciate that. So the next item on the agenda is we sent a request to the Lee County Commission to continue to be our fiscal agent and custodian of records. Mr. Caldwell, would you like to speak to that, or Mr. Gallagher?
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Director, members of the board. Mike Gallagher. So at the last county commission meeting, the county commission had approved being, or the previous commission meeting, the commission had approved being the fiscal agent and the custodian of records for the Eddy Lea board. Happy to continue to do that. We'll post the agendas. We'll take the meeting minutes. Ms. Elizabeth White is here today doing a stellar job. We'll be doing a stellar job on taking the meeting minutes, and we'll distribute those to the board. We'll need everyone's cooperation in getting the agendas posted your individual entities like Eddy County, City of Hobbs, City of Carlsbad, on your boards or on your individual websites, and I'm here to answer any questions. Thanks.
Any questions?
Is this just for the next fiscal year, or is there a multiplier where we can do it 3 years in a row or something like that?
We didn't, I don't believe we put a time limitation on it, Mr. Valpado, but I think the county will be happy to continue to do it for as long as the Lea board would like us to do it.
I, for one, greatly appreciate the county taking that on. We had talked to the other members, and you had volunteered, and we appreciate it very, very much. We're a volunteer organization. The Eddy Lea board is a volunteer organization. We really don't have any formal staff as such, and so it's greatly appreciated, and please thank the commission for their willingness to do this.
Will do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
So the next item on the agenda is because we have not had a regular meeting schedule, we've only typically had special meetings, and the county and I think the public and others would like very much for us to have a schedule of meetings that's routine, not to mean that we can't have special meetings, but the reality, I think it's better if the public knows, it's better when we know, and it's better that everybody knows when there's going to be a scheduled meeting and they can get it on their calendars. So with that, is there any discussion, or we need to get a motion on the floor to be able to do this and set it up? And let me see, I think Mr. Black was willing to do that, and I don't know where my motion is, but I've lost it.
What was the date that we talked about?
The date that we talked about for people's consideration is the second Wednesday of the month prior to the end of the fiscal quarter. So that would mean it would be March, it would be September. What am I missing here? March, September, June. I'm missing June. March, June, September, and December would be the months.
Okay, I move that we conduct regular meetings at 9 a.m. on the second Wednesday prior to
The month preceding the end of
the month preceding the end of the quarter.
Okay.
And we alternate our meeting sites between.
Alternate the meeting sites between Hobbs and Carlsbad.
So that motion would take care of both 7 and 8 on the agenda. And
I'll second that.
We got to take a vote on that.
And may I suggest we add that since we're meeting here this month, which is the quarterly time, that the next meeting then be conducted in Carlsbad, and then we cycle every other meeting. Mr. Caldwell, you're...
Yes, I would like to suggest, Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'd like to suggest an additional criterion, and that would be that you meet in public buildings. So you're meeting here in the City Commission chambers in Hobbs, that you do the same, or in the Eddy County Commission chambers over in Eddy County, and not meet in private buildings.
I have no problem with that.
Mr. Gallagher.
And I would also suggest, Mr. Chairman, that we rotate the meeting locations from the various member entities. So a meeting here in Hobbs, another meeting in Carlsbad, a meeting in the Lovington at the Lee County Courthouse, and then a meeting at the Eddy County Commission Chambers or Eddy County Courthouse. That would be my suggestion for meeting locations.
So rotate that as well?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, okay, that is that a friendly amendment?
I'll amend my motion.
Okay, so we're going to rotate between cities, and we're going to rotate also between the city council chambers or the city commission chambers and the county commission chambers. So.
I'll second that as well.
Okay, so is everybody semi-clear on the motion?
Crystal?
Yes.
Okay, we've got a motion and we have a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, I'll assume you're ready to vote. So Commissioner Long,
Yes.
Commissioner Black,
Yes.
Mayor Cobb.
Yes.
I vote yes. Heaton votes yes. Mr. Volpato,
Yes.
Mr. Shirley,
Yes.
Miss Commissioner Crockett.
Yes.
Okay, so the motion passes unanimously. So the next, and that includes, I think, both items 6 or 7 and 8, which included the meeting locations. So those are both covered under that motion. The next item on the agenda is the discussion of an outside general counsel. And Mr. Caldwell, would you like to approach us and discuss that?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, the Eddy Lea Energy Alliance has functioned without a general counsel. I believe that from time to time you have consulted with an attorney on transactional law, I guess on your joint powers agreement and your agreement with Holtec. Lee County would like to suggest that this board consider retaining a general counsel. The 4 attorneys for the 4 entities that belong to Lea, we've discussed this. This is kind of in conjunction with item 10 also, is that we agreed that I would take the lead temporarily to ensure that we're complying with administrative law in the state of New Mexico and some other items. And I think the 4 attorneys were cooperating. We're trying to make sure that we're complying with all the state law. But at some time, we believe this board probably should consider retaining a general counsel, not someone who bills at transactional attorney rates, but someone who would bill at local attorney rates for local entities. So we would just like to suggest that to you for consideration. Under item 10, if the board wishes, they could approve.
Is there any questions about the general counsel from the members? In the past, we have used a firm in Albuquerque, and I think that it would be appropriate if Mr. Caldwell and the other 3 attorneys for the members make some recommendation to us. I don't think there's anybody here that, or maybe you do have some idea who could fulfill that position that is really up to speed on issues associated with municipalities and counties that make up this organization. So perhaps at the next meeting you could make some recommendation to us, and
I'll be more than glad to talk with the other 3 attorneys,
Okay.
Eddy County, Carlsbad, and Hobbs. Yes.
okay. Then moving to item, any other questions people might?
Do we need a motion on this?
I don't think we do on this one, but the next one I think we may need a motion. So the next item is item 10, which is just a general internal counsel.
It is. Lee County would like to suggest to the board, and again, I've spoken with the other 3 attorneys from Carlsbad, Hobbs, and Eddy County, and until you've decided to retain an outside general counsel, and again, not a transactional attorney, because you already have that type of attorney, Lee County would offer or allow me to act as your temporary general counsel until you made a decision on retaining a general counsel.
So we appreciate your offer to do that. And are you thinking that maybe the general counsel would rotate amongst the attorneys for our 4 members, or what?
That's a possibility. I mean, the problem with doing that is there could always come a time when there's going to be a conflict among the 4 entities. And When that time arrives, it's not good to have one of the 4 attorneys acting as your general counsel. So if this board doesn't do it fairly quickly, then maybe it's good to have it rotate. But I think in the end, our recommendation would be for you to retain another attorney as your general counsel.
I would concur with that, John. I think that's, for long term, that's the best way for us to approach it.
Okay.
And
Mr.
make
Chairman,
some recommendations.
The following procedure then would be to go out for an RFP and list this as a service.
It would depend on whether it's, I mean, these are professional services, so I think the limit on that is $60,000. And so it would depend, I have no idea what a retainer is for this sort of an obligation. Do you have any suggestion about what that looks like?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, the hourly rate billed by most local attorneys who specialize in local government law is probably less than $200 an hour, somewhere between $150 to $200 an hour. I don't believe that a retainer would be required, nor do I believe that the amount would exceed $60,000 per year. But as Mr. Bopato has said, we can still do an RFP regardless of the amount, but you do not have to do an RFP until you believe that the amount is going to exceed the $60,000 per year.
Just to get an understanding of what the contract would look like amongst whoever might want to do that.
You would retain them to advise you on things like the Open Meetings Act, the Inspection of Public Records Act, and procedural law. This body is not only a joint powers agreement body, but it is also a limited liability corporation. And so that attorney would offer you advice on all those types of issues.
Okay. So you could put together the list of criteria for what would go into an RFP for us?
I would do that in conjunction with the other 3 attorneys.
Okay.
I would speak with them. If the board prefers to do an RFP, which may be a good idea, even though it may not be required because it won't exceed the $60,000 per year, we can do that if this board gives us direction to do so.
Well, at least we would know what the bids are and what the cost would be, and it would be competitive.
All right.
If you.
Then what I'll do is I'll draft a RFP or criteria and bring it back to the board for its consideration at its next meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. So I think we need to probably have a motion to accept your generous
Okay,
willingness.
I'll make that motion. It's important for us to have consistent legal advice, and all of the member councils have been involved, and they defer to Mr. Caldwell. Mr. Caldwell's graciously volunteered to be our general counsel for the next fiscal year and confer with the other member councils where appropriate. Therefore, I'd like to move that the Eddy Lea Alliance accept Mr. Caldwell's offer and appoint Mr. Caldwell as the Eddy Lea Alliance General Counsel for the ensuing fiscal year.
So you'd like to make that for a temporary period?
Yes, or until council is retained pursuant to an RFP.
Okay.
I think that would be a better period of time.
Okay, can we change that to for a temporary period until we can retain
Yes,
general counsel?
yes. I had one question about this. The ensuing fiscal year, this fiscal year will be over in a couple of weeks. I say, are we talking about the following fiscal year?
Yes, I think so.
Until, I would think we would
I-
probably have the ability to take action on a general counsel at our next regular meeting. Would that be correct?
I would agree.
So amend the motion until our next regular meeting,
Okay.
if you would accept that.
Yeah, that, need to do that, I think.
All right, so is there a second?
I'll second it.
Is there any further discussion? Questions? If not, call the roll. Commissioner Long?
Yes.
Commissioner Black?
Yes.
Mayor Cobb?
Yes.
Mr. Volpato?
Yes.
Councilman Shirley?
Yes.
And Commissioner Crockett?
Yes.
And Heaton votes yes. So that we're now on item 11, and I think Mr. Lowe or Mr. Gallagher were going to give us an update on where we are with our webpage. And I apologize to everybody for the notification of the last meeting, and we had webpage problems and couldn't get the final agenda out, and we had to postpone the meeting till today. So thank you for your indulgence and those of you that are interested in this organization and what we're doing.
Mr. Chairman and board members, I'm just going to suggest that the Lea web page be hosted on the county's website. So right now there you have a Lea web page. I think that's managed or overseen through the Carlsbad Development Corporation or office. I would propose or suggest that instead of doing that, we could host a Lea web page through the Lee County's website. I think there's a number of different advantages related to that as it relates to advertising for the meeting and putting information on our website. So there would not be a charge associated with it. Just offering that, we can continue to use the Carlsbad or the site that Carlsbad manages. It becomes a little bit, potentially problematic as with the last notification for the last meeting. We have different websites and trying to get everything consolidated for a proper meeting notification. So just want to mention that for discussion purposes. So happy to stand for any questions.
So any questions for Mr. Gallagher?
Do you have somebody that, on staff that would be working on this on a daily basis?
So, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Valpardo, what we would rely on is any content that would be needed. So if there's content or updates that Mr. Heaton or a board member, if you all have content that we need to put on the website, we'll give you our staff person and we'll put it on the website. For meetings or any updates or any NRC hearings or any type of that information, we would do that. We would just put that information on. But if there's a particular report, presentation, then if you all give us that content, we'll be happy to put it on.
And can you link to, for instance, Holtec or the NRC? Or
I think it's a great idea, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
What we would do is on that same web page through the county's website, we would link to the 3 other member Lea entities as well as the NRC, Holtec. If there's another organization that you think is appropriate, we can do that.
Great.
It's a good suggestion.
Any other comments, questions?
Mr. Chair, this is John Waters over at Carlsbad. We currently have a domain, Eddy Lea Energy Alliance.com, I think that's the name of it. Is that something that the county would want transferred over to them, or that's how people find the having the name of the organization as a website rather than buried in one of the 4 local government sites might be useful as well to help direct people to it?
I think, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Walters, that'll be fine. It's at the board's discretion. My only suggestion is that whether Lea is going to have a website, that the county, we be responsible for maintaining that website. I think I trust our staff to do it. I think it works well with us being the entity to advertise for the meetings. So we can do that, or we can have it on our web page, either one. It's your all call. It's your call. Happy to do either one. I just want us to be the keeper of all the information and the one responsible to disseminate all the information.
I frankly couldn't agree more. I think it needs to be consolidated, and I, for one, again, thank you for the offer to be able to do that. And I think probably we ought to maybe have a motion in this regard that
Well, we have it as a discussion item on the agenda, so I don't think we can. So I think what we need to do is talk about the logistics of how it would work and then
have it on the agenda of the next meeting.
Yeah, my suggestion, Mr. Heaton, Mr. Chairman, other board members, if everyone's amenable to this idea, then I and my staff will get with Mr. Waters and work to have the Eddy Lea.com website transferred to the county. And then we'll start working towards that, and then come back to your meeting. What is the next meeting? In September?
September is the next.
As an action item for you all to take official action
Then
on
you
that.
can do an official cutover.
Absolutely.
You'll have it,
Yes,
you
sir.
can have it staged and do the official cutover.
After, yes, sir.
And I want to make sure that we're clear that it's going to be on the domain that we're using now.
Sure,
You're going to
yes.
maintain that
Yeah, we
domain.
can do that. That'd be absolutely fine.
Okay, I agree. All right,
Does that work?
that works.
Great.
Thank you very much for
You bet.
offering to do that. We're getting things finally organized, I think. The next item on the agenda is the discussion of the approving, the Holtec update, and myself and anybody else that would like to participate certainly can. But let me begin by telling you that there were 5 scoping meetings that were held in New Mexico, and then there was one general scoping meeting that was held out of the NRC nationally. And so they were pretty well attended. In Roswell, there were some, what I would call maybe 40 againers that were there, and there were a number of local people that spoke against it, not too many that spoke for it. And they were people from a variety of areas across Texas, several from Fort Worth. There were people from Midland, Odessa, people from Austin, and at other meetings there were some from California. So in Hobbs, I think we had a very strong response from our elected officials, both city, county, and also our legislative delegation from southeastern New Mexico spoke very strongly. Virtually the same 40 people, I think, were there as well, and had made a lot of comments. And then in Carlsbad, same again, we have probably the same 40 people there that were opposing it, and we had, I think, maybe 30 people that actually spoke in favor. Maybe it not have been quite that many, but it was a miserable location. It was about 60 degrees in the building, and people kept coming to me and saying, I can't stand it in this building anymore, I'm leaving. And they apologized, but we had a pretty good response there. And then in Gallup, most of the people that spoke there their comments were related to uranium mining and not this project per se. There have been a number of issues associated with uranium mining in northwestern New Mexico, and so most of their comments were related to that and concerns about having the same kind of problems here, but from my perspective, they were totally unrelated. Albuquerque had a large group there, about 200, I think, was somewhere in that neighborhood, and there were just a few people that spoke for, most spoke against. So, as a couple of people have said, basically we're pretty beaten up in the public meeting hearings, and so that's kind of a characterization that I would suggest. In general, I would just tell you that I think I heard nothing really in the way of anything that had anything to do substantively with the project, or facts that had anything to do with the project. And as usual, and this is normal, I think there were a lot of what ifs, what if this, what if that, and I think that's common for people as a common response. For WIP, we ran into the same issues, and most of those issues surround the transportation system, and so I think that's fairly common. That's the most visible part of the system, is those rail cars that might be coming through your town or might be coming by your house. And so people I think normally say, what is the risk associated with that? So I think there's a lot to do on our part about dealing with misinformation and dealing with facts and getting the facts out to the public about how how robust the transportation system really is. So at any rate, I spoke to the Radioactive and Hazardous Committee, the Materials Committee of the Legislature, and there was a Holtec individual there that spoke. Dr. Antone spoke as well, and then there were a number of comments negative about it as the project as well. But it was an opportunity to try to educate the legislature and those people that were there in front of the meeting, and basically just to there was a gentleman by the name of Carlisle from Midland or Odessa that spoke for him on behalf of a ranch and oil company, and it was pretty confusing what he was saying, in that it was issues about water communication, issues about contamination of the oil field, none of which have anything that are relative to this project. And there's no water communication. We're not over the Ogallala. There are none of those things that are actually there. It was mostly a good hyperbolic comment that he made, and I'm not sure, maybe he's speaking on behalf of denigrating our project in favor of the WCS project. That's may have been his purpose to try to get it over into Texas rather than being in New Mexico. And of course, one of the number one issues that we have in our part of the world is that Eunice is 2 miles from the WCS project, and Hobbs and Jow are around 15 miles from that project. And any emergency response is not going to come from Andrews, which is 37 miles away. It's going to be our response. We're going to have all the responsibility in New Mexico and none of the benefits. And so that's a fundamental issue with it being at WCS versus being in New Mexico, where we have a much better site. It's more isolated, and New Mexico has the benefit and also the responsibilities. So I think there's a major case to be made for that. So that's basically what's going on. Just to give you an interpretation of mine at this point in time, the comment period was extended to the end of July, the 30th of July, to the NRC for scoping comments. And I think that we would like to have a series of comments made, but the NRC, I think, is anticipating getting what's called, after they do their safety analysis of the project, having a draft EIS out by sometime next summer. And since the comment period's been delayed a couple of months, it may delay the issuance of the draft EIS, the environmental impact statement. But they're anticipating June, July timeframe for the release of that. After that, there will be a 60-day hearing process. They'll probably come into the area again for public comment, and then there will be also a 60-day comment period that will go on, and then from that they will move into their final EIS and then a safety evaluation report, and there will be other public comment period after that as well. So that's how kind of the schedule goes, and licensing is after all of that. And so it's hard to tell when you get into the regulatory process about what specific dates will prevail. But it's a couple of years down the pike is basically how I would add up the time. So probably from today, it may be 2 years from now that a final decision might be made. And then, of course, there are always the possibilities of lawsuits and how long that would take or not take. The NRC, as you know, is very technical, and I'm not sure that they've ever lost a case in court because of the technical aspects of what they do. But at any rate, that's not my decision to make. It's somebody else's, whoever's going to file a suit, or if they do or don't. So that's kind of the process, just to let you know where we are at this point in time. So I'd be happy to try to answer any questions, or anybody else want to make comments about hearings in Hobbs or Carlsbad?
Yeah, well, I'll share, I will. Our attention for City Hobbs and the commission is we are going to have a work session town hall, and we're going to ask the Holtec folks to come to be here to make that presentation. And then I intend to coordinate with Chairman Black and Mr. Gallagher about doing that in the other Lee County communities. So every community, they don't have to come to Hobbs to get the information, they can get it in their own hometown. So we're going to start that process now that the NRC process has begun. So.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong line.
And we need to do that again in Eddy County as well. All the municipalities in Eddy County need to be approached again, as well as civic organizations and all of that. And Holtec, just so you know, has hired the Agenda Company as their PR company, and they're very, very well qualified. And I think that they did a great job for Urenco, and I think they'll do a great job for Holtec as well. And we'll be, of course, all of us will be engaged with them. And Mr. Georges Scott is in the audience, and he is more or less representing them and is taking the lead with their public relations activities. So just to let you know that as well. So we appreciate you being here, Georges, as well.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Whenever these meetings come up, it would really be nice to make sure that we have those posted on the website.
Right.
So that everybody can find those easily, so that we can get more attendance to them.
Very good suggestion, yes. We need to do that for sure. So we'll try to get that started and get that organized, and I think that Georges and his team is interested in doing some of those things as well, and can help us with some of those coordinated efforts. So if there are any other comments from the board, otherwise we'll move to the next item, which is the approval of hiring a lobbyist for the Eddy Lea Alliance. It's become, I think, very clear that in order to coordinate with the legislature, who, as you know, don't have, they're not housed in Santa Fe per se. They have interim committees that meet all over the state, and they have committee meetings as well in Santa Fe, but their sessions are short, 30 days one year, 60 days the next year, but it's really essential that we coordinate with the legislature as this organization in educating them and doing all of those things that need to be done to not only educate them, but educate the public wherever they're going in their interim committees, and make sure that we're not only playing offense, but we're playing defense whenever the case exists. But we're at a critical stage, from my perspective, in terms of where we're going with the NRC, in terms of licensing, in terms of public opinion, in terms of all of those issues that are critical for us to advance the project. And as I think you've always heard me say, I think this is about as benign an industrial project as you could ever consider. The transportation system, the cask is virtually indestructible. The rail system that is dictated by RFA and the Department of Transportation, as well as the NRC in licensing the cask itself, they are all very cognizant of materials of this nature, and they just don't put them out there in the public venue without ensuring their ultimate safety. And so from that perspective, and then the site itself, I think this board knows, as well as many people in the public how robust this system is. It is the safest, most secure system in the world, without question. It was the only system that was allowed to go at San Onofre by California because of its robustness. And so that's the kind of system we're going to have here. And so I think that it's just imperative, from my perspective, that we engage a lobbyist to represent this group and be able to coordinate us. We're all volunteers, not that we won't get on the road and go back and forth, but the coordination of meetings and educational activities and those sorts of things that need to occur with the legislature are really critical at that stage, at this stage of our activity, and coordinating with the agenda group and what they're doing and their activities with the legislature as well. And I think Lee County and Hobbs also have people that they have employed. They have people employed as well, so coordinating the whole effort. And so we need to have somebody on the ground there representing us. So,
Mr. Chairman, do we have a estimated cost for the lobbyists?
The maximum amount, again, that we could allocate is up to $60,000 without going out for a bid for a professional services contract. And so that's the maximum amount. Councilman Shirley, I would suggest that we limit that to $50,000 because there may be the need to buy a couple of dinners here and there, and not so that we don't exceed the amount of money that we're authorized to be engaged with. Mr. Gallagher, would you suggest that that's a reasonable approach? Or maybe we need to have Mr. Caldwell.
Mr. Heaton, Mr. Chairman, board members, you know, I have a different view on pursuing a state lobbyist. So I'm not really probably the best equipped to tell you how to go about doing one right now. I really think this board needs to come up with, if you were going to look at a lobbyist, come up with a scope of work. I also think if you were to pursue a state lobbyist, that I would suggest doing an RFP, as we had talked about with a legal counsel. I think doing an RFP would be that would be my recommended approach, and see where the amount comes in at. You get what you pay for, obviously. So, you know, on one hand, you want to be fiscally responsible, right? But you know, on the other hand, you want to get, you know, everything you want me to accomplish what needs to be accomplished. So I don't know if 50,000 would be able to do it or not, because we haven't sat down and developed sort of that scope of work and what we would want the lobbyist to do. I'll be happy to volunteer myself and the other managers. I can't volunteer them, but I'll be happy to work with them if they are so inclined to do so. I think they would be, and we could come up with a scope of work for a lobbyist and present it to this board. We've done this, I think, for our own entities. You know, the board would like to do that. Again, my recommendation is keep it open and do an RFP and see where the bids lie. And that's if the board would want to pursue a state lobbyist. You know, Holtec is a partner in this organization, and you know, they might be able to help us or provide funding for the state lobbyist. So those are my comments, Mr. Chairman.
Just to respond to that, we did interview a few weeks ago 3 different groups, and that seemed to be the range. Between $40,000 and $60,000 were the ranges that they were proposing. Of course, that did not include making campaign contributions. It didn't include additional charges for things like they were taking people to dinner or whatever. So we could restrict it within that scope, and I think that we pretty well have a pretty good idea of what the scope of services would be. And I think that who we get is also important, and the area that they may or may not have any influence, but to get somebody that's relatively neutral that can work on both sides of the aisle, they're respected by both sides of the aisle. They must have had some experience and know the legislators, and I would suggest that 5 years is kind of a number that would be appropriate there, and not have any obvious conflicts of interest. I think if they're representing other groups that would conflict with what we're doing, I don't think that they ethically could do what we want them to do to represent our own interests. So, and they must be able to work with Holtec and the city's own lobbyists as well. So they're, and have the technical capability of understanding what we're doing, being able to explain those things in rather detail. And they must go to the interim storage committees that are appropriate, like the Radioactive Hazardous Materials Committee, the Economic Development Committee, Water Committee, the LFC, and others that we would deem appropriate for them to attend and interact with legislative members. When at the interim committee meetings, which are generally around the state, there are public officials there. The mayor usually does welcoming. They have city council people there. They have county commissioners there. And I think they need to be able to interact with them just socially when they're at those meetings as well, to talk about the project. And so I can go on, but
It sounds like you got the draft of the RFP done, John.
So I wasn't, Mr. Chairman, when you said that you had interviewed folks, I wasn't part of that, so I wasn't aware of any of that, so.
I apologize.
Again, I would recommend doing an RFP. I think that's the most open process.
I concur with him. I think that we need to go through that process.
We can if the board wants to do that. The only issue with the RFP is that it's going to take some time, as you realize. I think what is 30-day, we have to have it out for at least 15 days, and then we have to have a period, or we have to have it out, then 15 days to respond, 30 days before the response, then 15 days for whoever to respond. And then we have to have a meeting to make the decision.
Well, we can do a special meeting.
Yeah, we can do a special
With a
meeting.
single item on the agenda, so I think.
I'm just get concerned about the time that's gone by and the fact that I think that we're kind of behind the 8 ball a little bit, and meetings are going on in the legislature right now, and not to be able to coordinate with those, I think to some degree might be a mistake. But I think that if the firms know what our limits are, I think that our own legislators in this part of the state know who the firms are that are ones that we should be working with. And so I think that they should be integrated into the thought process as well. So those are just some thoughts. So it's up to the board to, I'm just giving you putting in my 2 cents, if you will.
I will make a motion that we move forward with the RFP process, and as a result of that, like I say, if we need to have a special meeting to do that, to try to catch up with some of the interim committee meetings and things like that, we can do that.
I second that.
Okay, any further discussion?
Yes, I haven't met a lobbyist yet that I was impressed with. From New Mexico to DC, so.
Yeah, but that'll be, hopefully, we'll ferret one out.
I hope so. I hope so.
So, is there any further discussion? If not, I'll assume you're ready to vote. So, Commissioner Long,
Yes.
Commissioner Black,
Yes.
Mayor Cobb.
Yes.
I vote yes. Mr. Volpato,
Yes.
Councilman Shirley,
Yes.
and Commissioner Crockett.
Yes.
Okay, so motion passes unanimously. So the next item on the agenda is a discussion about our member contributions. I think you've just heard several things that are going to impact our budget. And given that, I would like to recommend that our members that are the elected officials go back to their appropriate commissions or councils and ask for an additional $15,000 from each to cover some of these costs that are arising.
What's our current cash balance, Chip?
It's $99,000.
And after the budget, proposed budget,
We proposed 54,000 for next year. I believe that's the correct number. But right now, the way everything is, we'll have about 4,500 in audit fees and around 3,000 in insurance fees next year, along with maybe whatever we get from Carlsbad for a reimbursement of any expenditures they have from the economic development. So if you look at that, we'd still be 50 or 60,000 when it's over with.
so that may cover the attorney.
Depends on if you hire them.
So, at any rate, that's what I'm suggesting. It's,
I think
this is
we need.
just a discussion item, and I don't
We
think.
have not approved the budget for the next, we have approved
We
the
have,
budget
yes.
for the next fiscal year.
Well, so, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, now, the final budget is due by the 31st of July.
Right.
And we'll take it, it's July 24th, correct? We will take Lee County's final budget to the commission for approval on July 24th. So if there needs to be a change.
26.
26? Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. So there'll need to be a change prior to that day.
Yeah. So if we're gonna, we've approved the RFP for the outside counsel, so if that comes in, I think we'll need to probably make some changes there, and then I need to have that in hand before I go to my commission asking them for more money. So we'll just have to have that, whether it be a preliminary or a final.
I don't think it's something we vote on.
Yeah.
If everybody's in concurrence, then maybe the members can go and speak to their appropriate councils or commissions, and that was a number I suggested for a variety of reasons, as we've just gone over.
And Mr. Chairman, I would also like to suggest that each of the four entities, we submit our budget requests in Q1. You know, we're at the 11th hour right now for most of these entities putting in their budgets. I think for next year, we need to start addressing this in Q1.
Right.
The January meeting or December meeting even. We need to look at our financial needs and obligations and then present it to our group so they can better build their budgets and work that through the process instead of trying to slide it in at the last minute.
I don't disagree with that, so.
Well, I don't think we anticipated some of these costs that we're presently encountering, so.
But one reason for that is the way that NRC has fast-tracked their process, because, I mean, we didn't get a lot of notice that they were going to start the environmental assessment. And so that's what's kind of squeezed us in terms of some of our planning and budgeting.
So if we could hear back, because we're going through an RFP process, a couple of these things, if we could hear back from the counties and the cities, by the end of the month, is that appropriate? I mean, tell me whether that's a period of time that you could get us information back as to whether you're in agreement or not.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just taking a look at where we're at cash-wise in the budget. And, if we start out with $99,000, then we'll be getting another around $10,000 in next year, would be $109,000. And then you take out the roughly around $8,000 or $9,000 we would have in expenses, would get us back down to about $100,000. So if you're looking at $60,000 for attorney's fees and then 60,000 for others. The 15,000 for each entity would probably be enough to cover us for FY19, but I don't know about other years.
And what's realistic,
Mr. Chair and Directors, I would.
And what's realistic,
Mr.
Mr.
Chair and
Cole?
Directors, I would be very surprised if attorney's fees would approach 10,000. I even think 5,000. Again, this attorney is only going to advise you on administrative procedure and very simple issues, and would bill at a rate hopefully of less than 200 an hour. I'd be surprised at 5,000, but, you know, say something bad happens, 10,000, but it's not going to be a huge expense to hire a general counsel.
Okay, so saying it's 10, we're still need a little additional support to keep us whole. So if, make another number suggestion if you think another number is more appropriate.
I was just going to comment on timing. I think the only thing, at least for the city of Carlsbad, would be, I don't know when our next regularly scheduled budget meeting is. I know we have a special meeting today, which we couldn't get something new on the agenda for. So if the special, or if the regularly scheduled budget meeting falls outside, we may not be able to get you a yes or a no by the end of the month.
Well, what is the 15th of July appropriate?
We would for certain have one by then.
Does that make more sense?
I think we could probably, our commission could work with that.
And Mr. Chairman, does that work for Lee County?
What do you think, Mike?
So our next. Okay, so we have our next budget, we have a budget work session scheduled for July 19th, and then the commission, the next regularly scheduled commission meeting for Lee County is July 26th. So
we need to talk about the end of July then.
yeah.
Okay.
We just have one meeting during the month of July.
It's too hot and hot to have more than one meeting.
My commissioners work a lot harder than they don't do.
Your meetings don't last near as long.
Let's play fair, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so end of July, we'll have information back as to what you can or can't do. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is an executive session. And I would entertain a motion to go into executive session to a closed session.
So moved.
Second.
So we'll go into executive session. The motion is that in closed session, discuss threatened litigation concerning administrative procedures and the acquisition, disposal of real property in West Lee County as permitted by 10-15-1H, 7 and 8 respectively. So with that,
We can go into the commission's chambers behind us. And we can go.
okay.
We say we take a 5-minute break before we go ahead.
And we need to have a roll call vote on it.
Yeah, we do. So Commissioner Black, or Commissioner Long, Commissioner Black.
Yes.
Mayor Cobb.
Yes.
I vote yes. Heaton votes yes.
Yes.
Mr. Volpato.
Yes.
Councilman Shirley.
Yes.
Commissioner Crockett.
Yes.
One of, just to, I voted yes. Commissioner Crockett,
Yes.
because it is a closed session, you will not
Yes, I have to get off the-
you will not be able to participate.
Yes, I was actually fixing to tell you guys bye.
And we will dial you back shortly thereafter whenever we reconvene.
Actually, Mr. Chair, there is not a rule that she cannot.
No, yes, you
participate.
can.
I
We
know-
can get her on the phone.
I know there's not a rule, but at any rate, it seems like there were legal opinions about not allowing phone in a closed session.
That's not.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, my counsel, Kath Tabor, has advised me not to be on the phone during a closed session.
And the reason being is nobody knows who else is listening in.
Okay.
So, and I'm assuming that the mayor doesn't have recording going on in his.
I guess you'll find out.
Anyway, so At any rate.
That's honesty.
There's restrooms at the end of the room here, and there's also one down the hall.
For those of you that are in the public, I don't think this is going to take a terribly long time, 10, 15 minutes max, and or I would guess. And then we'll be back to complete the meeting. So thank you for your indulgence. I'm going to reconvene the meeting now, and I want to announce that there were no other discussions or decisions made in the meeting, no voting. That was at the meeting that the closed session meeting that we had. And the meeting was for the purposes for which were previously announced. And I'm now reconvening the meeting. So with that, the next item on the agenda is the approval of the contract with Dawson Geophysical. This is a company that does geophysical activities that look for oil and gas and various other geologic features of an area. We have had a contract with them in the past for, I guess, other clients, and they're very cautious about any of the pipelines or any of the other surface activity, but it's pretty common in the oil and gas arena to do these kind of studies for future exploration and drilling. So with that, I would entertain a motion to adopt the contract with the provision that our legal counsel review it and approve it or modify it.
Also, I think that there needs to be discussion on behalf of the Eddy Lea board that whatever information they gather is shared with Holtec and shared with NRC if they so desire.
Would you make a motion to that effect?
I would make a motion to that. I would make a motion to that effect.
So is there a second?
Second.
We got a motion and a second by Commissioner Black. Is there any more further discussion or any discussion about the agreement with Geophysical with the conditions that the information gained be shared with us and that the contract be approved by Mr. Caldwell? So hearing no questions or other points, I assume you're ready to vote. Commissioner Long?
Yes.
Commissioner Black?
Yes.
Mayor Cobb?
Yes.
Heaton votes yes. Mr. Volpire?
Yes.
Councilman Shirley?
Yes.
Commissioner Crockett?
I will abstain since I was not in that closed meeting.
Commissioner Crockett abstains. So the next item on the agenda is 1718 through 2021. Mr. Caldwell, if you would make an explanation, please, sir.
Mr. Chair, these items 17 through 21 are annual Open Meetings Act resolutions for the years 2013 through 2017. Other than the year to which they apply, the resolutions are identical and would ask that the board approve them. Before I do that, can we go back to item 15 just real quickly? The statutory language that's required coming out of closed session is more that nothing was discussed in closed session other than what was announced in the motion to go into closed session. I would ask that the record reflect that that is true.
That was very much what I was trying to articulate several times, several ways, so thank you for clarifying that.
So I stand for any questions on items 17 through 21.
Any questions? These resolutions are all the same other than the dates of the resolutions. We will need to vote on those individually.
Yes, sir.
And I would entertain a motion to approve the 2013 Annual Open Meetings Act resolution.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Mayor Cobb, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, assume you're ready to vote. Commissioner Long,
Yes.
Commissioner Black,
Yes.
Mayor Cobb,
Yes.
Heaton votes yes. Mr. Volpato,
Yes.
Councilman Shirley,
Yes.
Commissioner Crockett.
Yes.
That item 17 is approved unanimously. Item 18,
I'll move to approve the 2014 Annual Open Meetings Act resolution.
is there a second?
Second?
Got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. Voting, Commissioner Long,
Yes.
Commissioner Black,
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Cobb, Mayor Cobb,
Yes.
boy. Mr. Volpato,
Yes.
Councilman Shirley,
Yes.
Commissioner Crockett.
Yes.
Item 19, approval of the 2015 Annual Open Meetings Act resolution.
I move we approve the 2015.
Mr. Shirley moves.
Second.
Mayor Cobb seconds. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll assume you're ready to vote. Commissioner Long,
Yes.
Commissioner Black,
Yes.
Mayor Cobb,
Yes.
Heaton votes yes. Mr. Volpato,
Yes.
Councilman Shirley,
Yes.
Commissioner Crockett.
Yes.
Item 20, approval of the 2016 Annual Open Meeting Act resolution. I'd entertain a motion to approve that.
Move for approval.
Second.
Mr. Shirley moves and Mr. Volpato seconds. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, you ready to vote? Commissioner Long,
Yes.
Mr. Black,
Yes.
Mayor Cobb,
Yes.
Heaton votes yes. Mr. Volpato,
Yes.
Mr. Shirley,
Yes.
and Commissioner Crockett.
Yes.
Passes unanimously. The next item on the agenda, item 21, is approval of the 2017 Annual Open Meetings Act resolution. I'd entertain a motion to adopt that.
I'll move for approval.
Councilman Shirley moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Mayor Cobb seconds. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. Ready to vote? Commissioner Long,
Yes.
Commissioner Black,
Yes.
Mayor Cobb,
Yes.
Heaton votes yes. Mr. Volpato,
Yes.
Mr. Shirley,
Yes.
Commissioner Crockett.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously. So the next item on the agenda, Mr. Caldwell, approval of disclosure forms.
Mr. Chairman, directors, I've circulated a form previously for your review. I'd like to, as part of the discussion, remind you that the Financial Disclosure Act does not apply to local governmental entities such as municipalities or county commissions or entities that have been created by joint powers agreements. The act that does apply is the Governmental Conduct Act, and the only disclosure required by that act is pursuant to 10-16-4.2, outside employment. So I have prepared a form for your approval that discloses outside employment if a member of this board is employed outside of being appointed to this committee, and would ask you to approve this form.
Mr. Caldwell, how often does this have to be reinstituted by members?
The Attorney General has given the opinion that there are 2 occasions on which this form must be submitted. If a member is employed at the time they become a member of this entity, they should disclose outside employment, or after having become a member of this entity, they become employed outside of this committee, they should disclose that. There is no annual requirement that this be updated.
Okay. So any changes need to be disclosed?
Only on outside employment.
Outside
That's the only
employment.
change that would require it. Yes,
Okay.
yes, sir.
I just wanted to clarify that. I'd entertain a motion to adopt the financial disclosure form.
I'll move to approve the financial disclosure form.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Volpato seconds. Is there any further discussion? This is a much simplified approach. No discussion? I assume you're ready to vote then. Commissioner Long?
Yes.
Commissioner Black?
Yes.
Mayor Cobb?
Yes.
Heaton votes yes. Mr. Volpato?
Yes.
Councilman Shirley?
Yes.
Commissioner Crockett?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously. The next item on the agenda is the election of officers, and we do this annually. And so the first office to be elected is the office of secretary. I would entertain nominations. No nominations for a secretary? We have to have a secretary. The present prevailing secretary is Commissioner Crockett.
She has done an excellent job. I would move to re-elect her to that position.
I'll second that motion.
You guys are so fun.
I have a motion and a second. Are there any other nominations? If not, I would accept a motion for acclamation.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Voting, Commissioner Long,
Yes.
Commissioner Black,
Yes.
Mayor Cobb.
Yes.
Heaton votes yes. Mr. Volpato.
Yes.
Councilman Shirley.
Yes.
And Commissioner Crockett.
All abstain.
Commissioner Crockett abstains. The next office that is presently vacant is for treasurer. I'd entertain a nomination for treasurer or nominations. No one wants to, you have a...
Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman, I would like to nominate Jack Volpato for that position.
Second that motion.
We've got a motion and a second. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, I accept a motion to elect Volpato by acclamation.
So moved.
Yeah, Mr. Cobb moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Shirley. Voting, Commissioner Long.
Yes.
Commissioner Black.
Yes.
Mayor Cobb.
Yes.
Heaton votes yes. Mr. Volpato.
I'll abstain.
Mr. Shirley.
Yes.
And Commissioner Crockett.
Yes.
Okay, so we have a secretary and treasurer. The next elected official is the vice chairman.
I'd like to nominate Mr. Heaton for vice chairman.
Second.
Are there any other nominations?
Move to do that by acclamation.
I'll second that.
Okay. Commissioner Long, Mr. Black,
Yes.
Mayor Cobb.
Yes.
Heaton abstains. Mr. Volpato,
Yes.
Mr. Shirley,
Yes.
Commissioner Crockett.
Yes.
Okay, the next item is the chairmanship, and I would like to nominate Mayor Cobb.
Second that nomination.
Any other nominations? Hearing none, I would like to move we elect Mayor Cobb as chairman by acclamation.
So moved.
So Mr. Volpato seconds. Any other discussion? We're ready to vote. Commissioner Long. Mr. Black?
Yes.
Mayor Cobb?
I abstain, but I want to make a comment that I accept this position with full knowledge that the other executive board members are going to provide a substantial amount of support to my chairmanship.
We are all right behind you.
Way behind you.
We're all way behind you and are anxious for your leadership and travel to Santa Fe every week. So I vote yes. He votes yes. Mr. Volpato?
Yes.
Mr. Shirley?
Yes.
And Commissioner Crockett?
Yes.
Okay. So you are the new chairman. Congratulations. Thank you for serving. We typically rotate this back and forth between Eddy County, Lee County, between the two counties, and I think it's an appropriate thing to do to keep everybody engaged and intact. And that is the end of our official business. And I once again want to thank Mr. Gallagher and his staff at Lee County for all of what they're doing for us, and thank you very, very much. And probably ought to thank Nick for getting us back on track here a little bit. And so, at any rate, thank you for all the work and effort that you've been willing to put into this. So with that, we're moving into, yes, Mr. Caldwell.
Briefly, I'd like to introduce Elizabeth White. She's been at the end. She's a Lee County employee. She's taking minutes for the meeting and will do so going forward. So a lot of the work by Lee County is going to be done by her.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you very much. You're welcome. Pleasure to meet you, and thank you for supporting us. So with that, we'll move into public comment.
Mr. Chairman, you're no longer Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm gonna let, you're in charge, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, the next item of business is public comment. We ask that you limit your public comments to 3 minutes. Please state your name, and if you're representing an entity, please add that to your comments as well.
Hello, Board. My name is Nick Maxwell,
Hello.
and I would like to make a comment today regarding the resolutions that were passed. It was mentioned that the resolutions themselves were all identical to each other, but unfortunately they weren't identical to the policy that was in effect at the time. And so I would submit to this board that the notice for the violation of the Open Meetings Act, where I have claimed a meeting from September 26, 2016 was invalid, still applies. And I would also show the board something today that I came across. It was mentioned that no substantive facts were brought up, and so I brought some facts today. Today I brought the amended and restated operating agreement for the Eddy Lea Energy Alliance. The taxpayers of Hobbs spent the taxpayers in this region spent $24,751 and a penny to have this operating agreement drafted. This is the legal framework by which this board operates and can even exist. And I guess one of the first things that you'll get to take part of is what I'm about to bring to you now, because I think it's very clear. Although this may not be the forum to debate this topic, it's, I believe, the forum, the appropriate place to notice the board about what the operating agreement says in Article 10. Article 6. It reads, "All contracts shall be signed by both the chairperson or the vice chairperson and the secretary or the treasurer." And today, I've got a land purchase option agreement. I've got a revenue sharing agreement. I've got a right-of-way and easement agreement between Eddy Lea Energy Alliance and DCP Energy Operating Company. I've got an agreement between Lucid Energy and Eddy Lea Energy Alliance for a right-of-way grant, and I've got a First Amendment to site lease with option, as well as a memorandum of First Amendment to site lease with option with the tower company. All of these contracts all share one thing in common. They weren't executed properly. They've only got the chairman's signature. And again, as I said, maybe this isn't the appropriate place to debate the topic. I find that the contracts here don't coincide with the operating agreement. So, thank you for listening. I oppose the project. I don't consent. I want this board dissolved. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Macklin. Does anyone else would like to address the Lea board today? If we have no further business, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Got a motion by Mr. Lombardo and a second. Second by Mr. Heaton. Thanks everyone for their attendance.
Thank you, everybody. Make your meeting.
Yeah, I gotta go.